Good evening. So, just finished updating Rider, literally as I was about to start streaming, so hopefully it'll still work. I decided that after the fun of trying to get authentication and identification working in ASP the other day, the solution is to ignore that for now and do something more interesting, which is writing unit tests for this isActive logic. And then I'm going to implement some more parts of the API. I also updated the README yesterday with all of the status of the HTTP API and wrote out some more thoughts on it and tried to actually come up with a design for the API, which is now here. So if I preview that, there we go. So we have getting a list of toggle views working at the moment, although the view itself will need to change because we now need to account for whether a toggle is active or not based on who is doing the querying. And we have post working. I also wrote some notes up here about the API. I'm thinking that we don't actually care about who the user is specifically at the moment. So what we can get away with is having an HTTP header for who the user is. Now, this can be anything, but I'll probably just use a GUID to start with. And we can just then say, as long as each client supplies a GUID or a unique identifier in here, that'll be their ID throughout the system, at least for now. And then when we actually get identification and login type functionality available, then we can switch to using that, possibly with the header as a fallback. So if you are logged into the system, then that is your identification, but if you're not logged in and the header is present, that's who you are, and if the header is not present, then you're anonymous, and just get the settings for everyone. But anyway, on to unit tests. Now, in fact, this bit is going to need to be extracted at some point. 5 alerts about .NET Core not being go away. But let's not extract it to start with, or shall we? No, let's not. Let's leave it as it is to start with. We'll come back and deal with that later. Toggle test, time of behavior. No, right. So we need the toggle itself and then some tests for it. Let's not move things, let's go back into presentation mode. And now everyone should be able to actually see everything. So let's go for toggle tests, and this is toggles being switched on and off, so we'll have our switching tests. Now I'm tempted to just delete all of these and rewrite them, but these stay pretty similar. Yeah, well, okay, we'll leave those. Oh, I'll also point out that I've got a bit of a headache since being at the gym, which I suspect is just dehydration. But if it turns out to be a migraine, I will cut the stream short because migraines make me go blind, and blindness is not great for trying to type, or at least not when you're used to it. And then there's obviously a splitting headache to go with it, so fingers crossed it's not that, it's just I haven't had enough liquid. So we have the isActive tests going on here. These are also validating the events there. I think our new tests are just going to cover the actual output of this function, and what events are there are validated by the other tests. Yeah. So our function should be, so our test should be when So we've got a set of conditions which is what states have been set up, and then for each setup of state you have 3 tests that you need to do. An anonymous user, or at least 3. Anonymous user, user in a group, user not in the group, user specified directly, and a user not specified directly. Maybe. How best to write that? Well, in fact, let's not worry about that straight away. We'll come back to it. So, when a toggle is in the default state, so nothing has been done to it, create a toggle, and toggle is active. Now we need our membership object, which we have on the base class, which is currently set up to do nothing interesting. It is just a substitute. And then we need a user ID. So this can be our anonymous one, so null or string empty. Should be false. Is active membership. So we need a user ID. I think that's the easiest way to do. We can have private static read-only string anonymous user equals null. Private static read-only string group 1 user equals user group. Private static read-only string group 2 user. And then we just need plain users, private static read-only string. Oh, in fact, these are all strings. I'm making consts rather than that. For some reason I thought that I couldn't do that. Going mad. User user 3 equals user dash 3 private const string user 4. It's always a good idea with test data, if you're not auto-generating it, to try and make it helpful, so that when you see an error message from a failing test in the future, you'll hopefully see something along the lines of toggle is active membership user grouped 1 should be true, and you'll be able to read that and at a glance go, my grouped user is not valid, not coming through as being in a group or being active. Whereas if you just had a random GUID or something in there, you wouldn't be able to tell which of the test cases, especially if you've got a theory test rather than a fact and have got multiple overloads with lots of different data coming in. Right, so let's replace this with our anonymous user. Then we should have some status for group. In fact, they should all be empty or all be false. Group 1 should be false. Is there an easier way to write that? Yes. We can just do new, that, anonymous user, group 1 user, group 2 user, user 3, user 4, var all users. And we can just say all users should be. I thought there was a should be for all. Oh well, we'll just do this all user toggle dot is active membership user. That needs capital. Should be true. Should be false. Now my head hurts. All users. I think it just needed negating somewhere, but we'll just specify it for now. We'll refactor it later once we've proved it works. Right. So this one should. I wonder if Rider now supports tests now that it's updated. That would be nice. Well, something's happening. They may not run. Well, we didn't. Please go to Rider Early Access Program to see if a pre-release build is available. Oh well, we'll just use the command line. Nope, that one. And we'll just run the test project we care about rather than all of them. So .NET test source Crispin.tests, Crispin.tests. Value cannot be null. Parameter name key. And line 85. So our anonymous user. Yes, well that makes sense. Now, first bug found. If string.is null or empty. It's null or white space. I don't trust people not to put white space in it. So if we have some value, and that is in the dictionary, do that. Get groups for, we can. Yeah, that'll do. For now. Our test will no doubt prove that that's wrong at some point. So next, when a toggle is active for everyone, so we create a toggle with a new switched on event. User group, we don't explicitly call out everyone. I wonder if we should. Let's find out what happens in the toggle when that event comes through with nothing there. So we say switch on, we update the toggle time, we set users equal to true if we have a user, we set groups equal to true if we have a group, but we don't actually do anything otherwise. So in fact what we want is something like if e.user let's refactor this. Let's do has user var has group. Move that up there. If has user, do that. If has user equals false and has group is false, then we'll set anonymous active equals true. Yeah, that'll do, I guess. And I suppose our switch off needs the same thing as well. And it's actually identical, except we're setting all the properties to false. We can just do this. Could extract this into a method actually, and just have a parameter for whether it should be setting things false or true. Yeah, let's do that. I don't like having this amount of code duplicated. Handle switching. Do that. Do that. Active. No, don't do that. True. And then we'll do active false. Move that below these two. And do bool active. And that can be set like that. Yeah. Right. Is it RS for signature? It is. So let's move that down. We'll have string user string group. Yep. Leave non-compilable. Right. So we can now replace that with user, that with group, that with user, that one with group, and here we can do e.user, e.group. And now we just need our anonymous active flag. Put some space in between these just to indicate that they're a unit together. And as they're a unit together, and they're only affected by that handler and the is active, I think we'll extract it later to a class, because then we can reuse it in projections that want to write out whether someone's active for various things as well. Cool. Anonymous active, which is false by default. And so now we'll just say if string.is null or white space user ID, return whether it's active for anonymous people or not. Now we can get rid of that, and that, and that. Let's build that and rerun our tests. One day while I'll tab to the right console window. You always want my attention. Go away. That's better. Passing tests. Right. Now let's go back to our switching tests. So we now have one with created toggle when the toggle is active for everyone. So that's an active for everyone. So in fact, this should all now be true. Gonna have to learn out what Rider's keyboard shortcuts are for find and replace. It's not the same as Atoms and it's not the same as Visual Studios. That one should pass, I guess. And while that's running, let's write the next one. Fact. When a toggle is active for a user, and we're going to copy these. This time though, we're going to specify that our user is user 3. In fact, I should have copied these because this should all be false except for that one. And let's make it stand out by using a different syntax. When a toggle is active for user oh no, actually we validated both ways. We don't need to do a negative test because user 4 by definition is not user 3. And we've already validated that's false. Okay. So now we do fact when a toggle is active for a group, and this time we will use one of the groups, which can be, let's use group 2. We have user 3. Let's rename these. Let's have user 1 in group 1 and user 2 in group 2. We'll just rename the contents these. Group group 1 group 2. Now we also need to have some groups. Private const string group 1 equals group 1, and the same again, we'll have a second one, const string group 2 equals group 2. Probably should have actually used rename field. There we are. And do that, copy that, Control H, replace all. Good, that all compiles at least. Right, when the user is active for a group, now we need to separate up our membership so that they are. But let's set it up after we've applied the method, because we can also now test that whether a user is in a group or not is now part of the isActive check, rather than it being read when the event is applied. So get groups for hold we want to set this up. We want user1 to return a new array which just contains which contains group 1, and so we can prove the negative case as well. Groups for user 2 in group 2 returns a new array of group 2. Right, so this should all be false. User 2 in group 2, but that's wrong. That needs to be group 2. So when we check this line, user 2 in group 2, this should be true. Be nice to have some kind of matrix for these. Perhaps we can refactor it to that later. Yeah, let's just make it work to start with rather than overcomplicating everything. So let's run those tests and see how much breaks. I'm expecting the groups to break because we have that if statement with just a question mark in the middle of it. When the user is active for a group, or sorry, when a toggle is active for a group. Is that the only one that fails? These stack traces aren't easy to read. Yep. So we need to go back to the toggle and implement this. Yeah, let's just return true. Which will return true if they're in any group, but really we want to do a test for if they're only in one group. So that tells us that we're missing a test case as well. So let's rerun those tests and have a look at the test case we're missing, which is private const string user 5. Let's move them down here. User 5 in group 1 and 2 equals user 5 group 1 group 2. And what we're going to do is explicitly turn the thing off for one group and off for another, and on for the other. So we take this test. When a toggle is active for one group and inactive for another. So we do this. We send two toggle events. We have the switching on for that group and an explicitly offness. Toggle switched off for group 2. So the user in group 1 should be true. The user in group 2 should be false. And user 5, who is in both groups, should be false, I think, because the other day when we were discussing this, we were saying that if we had an overlapping condition, then our switches should tend to be off, because that feels more natural. It might be something that we end up putting a configuration flag for in later, but For the time being, an overlap should result in false. Right, so let's see what happens when we run that. I think it'll fail. I'm reasonably sure it will. And which line was it? 148. Ooh. That's definitely that line. So we had a breakage on the wrong line. So we get the groups for a user. We get all of the things that exist and get true false. We have an array of trues and falses. So I think we do that. Possibly. So if they're only in one group, then we'll get. Actually, we'll end up with an. Will we end up with an empty array? I think we do end up with an empty array. So I think it might be a case of dot any. So if there is some stuff in that list and they're all true. So I don't know if all returns true or false on an empty array. I have to fix these warnings as well, they're beginning to annoy me. Alright, they all passed. Which means we don't need that bit in it. Because I don't think I saved that. Let's just try it again though. Ooh, many things blow up. Really, we do need that in there. And then, yeah, definitely gonna fix those warnings. Alright. Let's check what we've done. We've added a bunch of tests with some bad whitespace. And got some bad whitespace in this as well. Where is that bad whitespace? The last two tests are there and there. Okay, so NCM toggle handle is active based on groups. Right, and let's do this. Instead of running test, we will just run build. Right, so our first one is in which file? Get or toggles handler line 19. Ah, this is because my storage is not asynchronous. but when it comes to implementing it later, it will be. How do we fix this? So if we remove the async, we can't return that directly. You have to do task.fromResult. Yeah, that'll do. Right, and the other one I bet was the other handler. Yep. And the reason I'm not implementing the async part of the storage yet is because, although I suspect I will need it, I don't know yet. So in the interests of you ain't gonna need it, I'm trying not to implement it. Handlers, remove compiler warnings, async. Okay. Right, what next? Let's go back to these switching tests. Now, I think, given this setup is the same for everything, and in fact should be in all of these tests, pretty sure I can write a matrix to say what state we expect things to be in. We roughly want to say something along the lines of inline data, so we'll have yeah, that's the difficult part, is this toggle switched on and toggle switched off. You need to be able to specify the different values for that. You know, we don't have to use inline data. We could do this. Public static IEnumerable of object array. It would be if I could type that. Toggle state matrix. And we'll do that. Right. So if we do yield return new array of stuff, I think we'll need the object. New object array. Now we don't want any extra toggles to start with. So we just do, what types do we accept in the objects? New object array. 0. Oh, I suppose we've got array empty, haven't we? Array empty object. So those are our events, and then we have each user. So the anonymous user should be false. We have that. So the anonymous user should be false. The user in group 1 should be false. User in group 2 should be false. User 3 should be false. User 4 should be false. And user 5, which is in both groups, should be false. And I think we'll do this as well. We'll just go RV, replace 6 occurrences, var no switches. Then we have toggle switched on for user 3. So I'll have var on for 3 equals a new array of objects. Not sure if this is better or not yet. Which contains that. What's wrong with that? Oh, I need brackets. What are the benefits of using .NET Core? More things to rage about. No, more seriously, cross-platform. I want to deploy to Linux servers. Bits of it are faster. Less dependency / integration with IIS. I'm not a fan of IIS, so anything that keeps me further away from it is better. And Rider is quite a nice IDE, even though it's got rough edges. And as that is cross-platform itself, I can do all my development on a Linux machine eventually. So yeah, I guess those are the benefits to me at any rate. Whether .NET Core is ready for production yet, I wouldn't like to say. So these are on for 3. White Rider over Visual Studio, because Visual Studio is slow as hell. And yeah, that's mostly it. It's slow as hell. And I've been using Rider since their early access program came out. And yeah, it's much faster. It's got a lot of nice tools built into it, like this REST tester. Don't get me wrong, Visual Studio is a great IDE. It is miles ahead of Eclipse, for instance. But yeah, I just prefer Rider. Maybe it's the inner rebel in me, and it's a really minor way of rebelling. Yeah, I mean, the REST tester built into Rider is nice. There's a bunch of things like F# interactive, which I've not used, profiling, and some iOS and Android stuff, which again I've not used. The thing I miss from Visual Studio the most is continuous testing when you have ReSharper and .cover installed at the same time. But I raised an issue about that, and apparently it's coming at some point. Yeah, I do have Visual Studio installed still because at work we use IIS local a lot, and Rider can't integrate to IIS local to do debugging or anything, so have to have Visual Studio for that. So we need a group for this one now. So we'll copy that group 2. I think it was group 2, wasn't it? Yeah, group 2. Those are our states. Hang on, those should all be false except for that one, which should be true. Which one? That one. 3. Use the 3. Yeah, I'm not sure this is any better, to be honest. Is work while you're in Finland? Yes! Yes, and then Brexit happened, and I was glad I was already in a different country. Group 2. So at some point the UK is going to disconnect the Channel Tunnel, disconnect the internet cable, and float off into the Atlantic. And I shall wave from Finland. Let's use the copy and paste design pattern, because that's great fun. Did I copy the wrong thing again? I think I did. False for everything except for true for user 2 in group 2. User 2 in group 2. True. I'm still not sure if I prefer this or not. This is still a huge amount of extra dumping stuff. Oh, and then also the UK. doing all of their, we're going to snoop on everything and we're going to ban encryption, because that's a smart thing to say. Yeah, so stuff like that. I'm not. The only things I miss about the UK are my friends there, my family, and sausages. Finland don't do proper sausages. Oh, and probably tea, but I get that shipped over to me, so. We've done group 2, so now we have when toggle is active for groups, so we need on and off. Let's copy that. Yeah, I'm not sure this is any better. Come winter, you will miss the climate. Hell no, they get snow here. It was great. Everyone at work was grumbling whenever it snowed, and there was me running around the office going, "Look, it's snowing! This is amazing!" I saw more snow in like a day than I had the rest of my life. It was great. I even offered to go and clear someone's driveway, because that's a novelty to me. He didn't believe me. On for group 1. Off for group 2. Of course, yeah, I'm not convinced this is better. This is horrible. Do that. Do that. Let's rename that actually. Let's call it overlapping groups, because that's more of the case that we're testing, so trying to use a businessy language rather than something more technical. Do you see a lot of going from the US to European countries? I can't say I've noticed any, but before this I only worked in one tiny agency, not in a major city. So I've avoided cities, so I'm not a huge fan of big cities. Get scared. Yeah, there's a French Caribbean guy at work, and me. I think we're the only 2 foreign people. There's a guy from Lapland as well. I think, I'm not sure if that counts. Depends who I ask. So group 1 should be true. User 1 in group 1 is the only one that should be true. Let's do this. False. False. Yeah, let's create this as a separate test. Theory. No. Fact. When testing all toggle the things. Theory. Member data, I think it is. Name of. No, let's use the string, because then we get autocomplete. And then after that we can then do name of. Name of, open bracket, delete. Delete. Right. An object array called events. Can you get by only knowing English? Yes. Everyone here speaks English. I'm struggling to learn Finnish. Every time I try and book myself onto a course for it, they're all instantly booked by, I guess, university students. So I am keeping an eye on courses, but I can speak a tiny. I can fake my way through a conversation with a cashier in a supermarket, and I can greet and say hi and things like that. But no, for the most part, English is fine. Yeah, and work speak English most of the time anyway because we're a multinational company, so everyone talks English. Yeah, Rosetta Stone, last time I checked, didn't have a Finnish course, and nor did Duolingo or anything else like that. I have a book on learning it, but it was written in about the 1800s or something. It's not that useful. User bool expected. So we grab the same setup from here. We create the toggle each time, passing in our events. And then we say toggle dot is active membership user expected. No, should be expected. Right, I would almost guarantee this is going to fail, and I might delete it anyway. Let's run the tests. I'm sure I had this in the history somewhere. There we go. Yeah, and 10% of Finland is primarily Swedish speaking as well. In fact, at least 2 on my team are primarily Swedish speaking. Yep. That blew up. Let's go back and check our setups. When no switches are active, everything should be false. When it's on for user 3 should be true. Everything else should be false. When it's on for group 2, everything should be false except for the user in group 2. When the groups are overlapping, everything should be false except for the user who is only in the group that is true. I fixed a few of those, so try running again. Finnish is a dying language? I wouldn't say dying. Everyone speaks it here. There's still, what, 5.5 million Finnish people? So it's not dying, but anyway, I know more than Norwegian is, and there's less Norwegians than there are Finns. The thing I find really weird about Finland is that there's, what, 5.5 million Finns, and there are more people living in London than there are all Finnish people in the world. Which blows my mind. Now, am I happier with these tests, with this large lump of yield? Could I write that better? Probably. Return new object array. And fill it with new object arrays. Like that. Can I do multi-line? Oh, I can. Oh, that's posh. Would you scroll? Thank you. Do that. H, comma. You from London? No, I don't do cities. I'm from a small town outside of. I used to be from outside Bournemouth. Not that I've lived there in many, many years, but. Right, what's his problem? Type object doesn't match. I do that. Can I then get rid of that? Oh, I think I can. Replace with nothing. Wait, I suspect this isn't right. Dot select x. That's not annoying in the slightest. X. See, that's so close. If only I could make these into a static expression, then I could just use inline data. Is that right? Yeah. That. It's not entirely what I meant to be doing this evening, but oh well. Matrix equals new object array. Right, and then we can do, this is meant to be an enumerable of objects arrays. So return matrix select x new object. Wow. Might just do that. Or return no matrix as. You not do as enumerable of this. What are my types here? Yes, I suppose it makes sense. What I want is not that, I want that. Then I have to put new object in front of everything again. Ah! Replace that with that. The worst thing about Finland is their keyboards. Weird as hell. Right, good. Do I prefer that? Perhaps. Oh, and of course it doesn't do formatting. I don't know. Research a full stack .NET Dev. Fundamentals book, and now I'm working through an SPMVZ book, and I don't cover X courses. Oh, that's good. Do you like it? How does it compare to other languages you've done in the past? My undergrad was in EE, so I'm not sure. Oh, I've got news for you. I graduated as an electronic engineer as well. I only went into software development because I wasn't convinced by my programming, my electronics abilities when I finished university. Looking back on it, I was sorely overconfident in programming ability. I was rubbish at both at the time. Oh, hang on, we can do vertical selection, can't we? Let me do this. Yes, we can. Yeah, I prefer this because I don't like having all those separate asserts. One assert per test. And now I get a separate exception with every one that blows up, which I think is better even though I'm not entirely happy with this. Could probably make it better somehow, but I'm at a loss for the time being, so that'll do. What would I recommend? I don't know. It depends what you're interested in. I'd recommend reading some books on less on language specific stuff, but more on like principles of development. That's, I think, what I found most useful. There's good books like The Mythical Man Month or Clean Code, which is very heavy going. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I suggest. It kind of depends what you're interested in. But you might want to have a look on GitHub for some of the awesome lists. So there'll be a repository somewhere called, I think there's one called Awesome Lists, and if you look in that, that'll have links to awesome C# related things, and there's also awesome books for development as well. So they probably have a better curated list than I do, because I've read hundreds of books, and whether I think they're good or not is anyone's guess. Yeah, that's probably something similar. Let's have a look. Yep, those are probably useful, but like I said, oh, that Dissecting a C# application book, that was very good. I have a physical copy of that somewhere, very old and battered. That was very good. How much it's applicable now, not sure, but it certainly opened my eyes to the use of design patterns actually in production code. Daily design, anything that like teaches you about design patterns is probably a good idea. Although when anyone learns a new design pattern, they then use it everywhere, even when it's not applicable. Doesn't matter how advanced you are in the industry, you still do it. I've learned MVC. Right, everything has to be MVC. I've learned command. Now everything's a command. Yeah, don't do that with Singleton. Right, now that we have tests for our activeness, I'm wondering if I should extract them or not. Let's not until we need a view that does it, which is straight away. Because in our projections, we have this all toggles projection, which creates a toggle view. Now at the moment, we have this switched on and switched off, which is just setting the true and the false of active, which is now wrong. We need to, I don't know, print out what groups it's active for and what users it's active for and what the anonymous state is. So let's refactor a bit. Now, let's commit these test changes first. Let's get rid of the bad white space. Right, get CM. Oh, and if you've not had experience of source control, that's probably the most important thing to learn around. Yes, toggle switching tests, refactor to use single theory test. Right, so one of the things about refactoring, which I try and stick to but never usually works, is that you should only change the code under test or the tests, not both in the same commit or at the same time. Which is usually a problem because you're usually refactoring something that involves like changing a method name, and if you change a method name, then both have to change. But in our case, all we're going to do is extract some fields. This method's going to stay here, we're just going to call out to something else. So, let's start off by let's cut these out, because then we'll get compile errors everywhere. Compile errors prevent you from screwing up. Well, to a certain extent. Now we need a name for this, which is our toggle activeness class. That's not a good name. Naming things is such a pain. Toggle state. Yeah, why not? I'll call it that for now, so I can think of a better name. Toggle state. I don't want to call it storage or determiner, because that's not a nice word. Status. No, that indicates whether it might be broken. Toggle state. I'll just call it that for now. Right, so we have some classes which need some things importing. We need a constructor with these in. That, and we shall now just say state equals new toggle state. That itself, create the field, it can be read only. Right, now we just have to go through and replace everything that's red with this state. So I think this method can move into the state. We'll make it public. We'll fix those. Yeah, because now we can just say underscore state dot handle switching, and nothing else needs to change. At least not in these methods. Now we need to make this work. Now we can't remove this method because we need it, but we can copy and paste the method, re-import link, and then here we can just replace the body of the method. In fact, we can replace the whole thing with that underscore state dot is active membership user ID. Now we've successfully, well, probably successfully, pulled out a bunch of stuff into a separate class, so hopefully it will still build. Is learning Python at all useful? I find it pretty dreadful to work in the language. One of my close friends describes Python as the duct tape of programming languages. So if you've got something and you want to put it somewhere else, Python is probably the solution. I don't actually know Python myself, but it has been on my list of things to learn. I'm somewhat apprehensive at the idea of a language that is white space sensitive. But yeah, is it useful to learn? I've heard a lot of good things about it, so yeah. And even if you don't end up using it, learning another language is always really useful. Especially if it's, well, any language is useful, but if it's really different from your main language. So if you're using C#, learn a functional language, or learn a weakly typed language like Ruby or JavaScript or something, because there might be some way of doing something in that language that you'll find really useful, and then you'll realize that you can do it in .NET, people just don't do it so much. Like callbacks, for instance, in JavaScript. You can do them in C#, people just don't do it as much. Or Ruby has the command pattern really baked into the language. And after learning Ruby for a bit, I started using the command pattern via actions and func a lot more. So yeah, it's always useful to get another perspective, because you'll learn things. Yeah, I've been thinking about Golang, but I don't know. I tend to believe all the conference speakers I've seen, who always get up and go language. That was invented by someone who really knew language design, and who woke up after a 40-year sleep and designed it, and have missed out on all the modern stuff like generics and things. So the language I'm trying to learn at the moment is Elixir, which is a functional language, and hurts my head. So let's see if we've broken our tests by extracting things. We shouldn't have done. We've not changed any logic. Right. So we'll add this and commit toggle. Extract toggle state so it can be used elsewhere. Now the interesting thing about this is we can now move the tests. We've got separate commits for them, and when we move them we can actually get rid of part of the stuff that it didn't like. So if we go into our test project and we have these toggle tests, what we'll do is create a new class, which is our toggle state tests. Find our switching tests and just grab all of this out of it and put it in here, which will obviously have a lot of compile errors, and Sharp will be incredibly unhelpful and not actually import things. If that, we'll import this, but we won't in a minute. We're going to refactor these again. We'll need that for the time being. Would you stop that? That. Let's get that. That's not going to matter. That's not going to matter. We'll want shouldly, but we're not going to get it. Using shouldly. Using system.link. Right. So the membership, it does need to stay. So we do var membership equals substitute for iGroup membership. Yeah, but all the cool kids are being functional programming languages at the moment. I'm not a cool kid, not by any stretch of the imagination. And we don't want to toggle anymore. In fact, what we want is to comment that out, and we'll have var state equals new toggle state. Instead of checking this toggle property, we will now be checking the state, which means we need to apply our events. Right. Which I think means we can cheat and use a little enum. So we'll have a private enum switching, which will be none. User does that make sense? I want to get this out of these. Yeah, and for added selloutness, as I don't like F#. I don't mind reading it and watching presentations that use it, but I don't like it. I like Elixir. I like the look of Elixir, sorry. Trying to learn it is causing a certain amount of head scratching. So, state dot handle switching. Now before we had our events that were just applied through magic. What we want is an on and an off. So in fact, private class state, yeah, that's a bad name, that'll do, public string user get set public string group get set public string, no, public bool active get set. So we now have no switches, which is an empty array of state. These are all state now instead of object arrays. So we've got state for user being user3, active equals true. We'll have a new state where the group is group2 active equals true. Missing a close bracket. And then this one, don't need that anymore, can be a state and a state for group now, hang on, was that the active one? I think it was active equals true, active equals false. Oh, that needs an equal sign, that explains that. We might be able to improve that and actually use inline data. I'll come back to that in a minute. So now instead of that we have state, which apparently needs to be public. Say for each in events. Oh, can't have the called state. E state dot handle switching e dot user e dot group e dot active. Right. And with luck, everything will still build and still work. But it probably won't. As you can see, I am the pinnacle of confidence when it comes to development. Everything probably is broken and probably won't work. Right, and we need to run them down here. And they still worked. Nice. Right, so it's no bad white space, so git toggle state move, no, what toggle state tests, move tests from toggle switching to toggle state. Now, as I now have full control of how these work, what we could do is cheat a little bit and say string state config. And then state config dot split on a colon. I think. No, let's split on a pipe. And then we'll do for each in that event, and then we'll say var parts, because that's a great name, event.split on a colon, and then state dot handle switching parts 0, parts 1, bool dot parse parts 2. Now I'm beginning to really not be sure about this. So instead of that, we take no switches needs to become an empty string. That's easy enough. On for user 2 now becomes oh, maybe this won't work. User 2 no, I'd have to specify it all out. No, never mind. Yeah, that was a silly idea. Let's just undo that. Right. Totally not what I intended to do this evening. Right, now let's fix our projection. So, all toggles now needs to contain per toggle a status. And we don't want to send that to the view directly anyway. Oh, thanks very much, terrific Taylor. Now I don't want to put those on the view, so I think we'll just have a separate separate dictionary here called states. There's a new dictionary of GUID, which will be our toggle ID, and toggle state, which is our state object. So we'll do this. So when a toggle is added, let's make that into a state body, and we'll now say underscore states equals add e.id new toggle state. Now for tag added and removed, they can stay as is, but for switched on, we now want to say, instead of that, states like that, handle switching e dot user e dot group no, e.group and true. And we will do the same thing down here, except this will be false. States with far too many brackets. So now when switching on and off happens, that'll update the states. Everything else will update the toggles, but we need to actually make our toggles have the content of the state. So as we have a toggle view here, I think you know what? If we go to the view, yeah, let's do it like that instead. We'll pass that into the toggle view. No, we won't. We'll just have a private field. Private, read only, toggle, state, state. And we'll do that. And then we'll have a public void switch on. Take a string user string group, call the states handle switching user group true. Do the same thing again, but this will be switch off. False. Interestingly, despite the fact that I've used the boolean here, I think booleans shouldn't be used in functions. Because at a glance, do you know what that true or false means? What happens if you were writing a graphics object and you can do something on a when you did Windows Forms development and you were writing onto graphics, you'd do something like edo graphics dot invalidate, and then you could do that. You could do true, comma true, and those parameters do something. No idea what. And I wrote a lot of graphics writing code, and I had to look up what these two parameters were every single time, because one of them was something about forcing a redraw and one of them was something else, and I can't remember what they were. So yeah, booleans are not very expressive from an API perspective, so try to avoid them. So now we've done that, that can be left as is. This can go back to an expression body. States can disappear. This can go back to toggles, except we now have switch on and switch off, which now no longer need those. Right, and the only other thing we need to do is get rid of this active. Now we need to print something interesting about the activeness. That should actually create a state. You never set that. Do you set those? Tags remove. No. There we are. So what I'm thinking is something along the lines of a public we want basically when this is serialized to our an API response, we want to print out something that will make sense. So I'm thinking something along the lines of where we can have like act state as a property, and then it'll say a non, true or false users, and then that would be an object of uid true or false repeated, and then groups would be the same. Which would be a group ID. And then it's up to the UI how it wants to render that. So what is the easiest way to represent that in objects? I think a state view, which will have the anonymous users and groups properties, and the other two are dictionaries. So let's do a public class state view, which has a public bool anon mouse get set. Not sure if it will be a get set actually. Maybe. We'll see. Public dictionary of GUID bool users get set. Public dictionary of GUID bool groups get set. The other alternative is an array. So instead you'd have state equals an array, which would then have type anon value or state true, type user state false, that kind of thing. But the downside of that is a little less indexable, because in the view you might well want to say address this by the user's ID for the currently logged in user. So you could do that. So I think I'll stick with this one for the time being. Right, now that we have our state view, so we'll have a public state view state state, and when that is requested, we shall create a new state view and populate it. So we'll say anonymous equals underscore states dot. Now I don't want to have to do this lookup all the time. In fact, I don't want to call this isActive at all, because the isActive requires this membership, which we won't have at this time, or at least we might not. What I think, in fact, is I want to expose these, because in fact that's the exact state we're after. Yeah, that's exactly what we're after. Yeah, I'm a bit hesitant at exposing these because I don't like exposing mutable collections. I want all of the modification to happen through this public method. So I think what we'll do is have public bool is active anon mouse. That returns anonymous active. Public dictionary string bool user state, and that is going to return users, but we'll do, can we do to read only dictionary? No, we can't. That was a weird noise. Oh, Steam sale. Oh dear. That's never good for your wallet. We'll do pair dot. No, in fact we won't do that because that's a horrible way of doing things. Do a new dictionary and pass the old one in. And I checked that makes a separate copy, so group state groups and we'll rename this to match actually. Anonymous state. So now we can say anonymous equals our states dot anonymous state, users equals states dot user state, groups equals states dot group state. What is the problem with those? Have I got my types mode? Cannot convert the source type to string ball to target GUID ball. Well, a GUID is going to be serialized as a string anyway in JSON, so it doesn't matter, we'll just do that. Great. Now our view has state in it as well, which we're going to need to test. In fact, we should get some compilation errors, I think. Or many. Yep. So this is our projection tests. So let's remove that, and instead we'll do view dot state dot anonymous should be false. Let's copy that, do that, that. Users groups should be empty. Should be empty. Right. All toggle tests. So let's take that out again. Do that. Right. When a toggle is switched on. But not switched on for anyone, so this is anonymous. State.active. Anonymous should be active. When a toggle is switched off. Yep, that'll do. Don't need to test all of it because we already know that our toggle state works because we have all of the other tests validated. Which I suppose means I'm not technically doing 100% coverage, but I tend to feel aiming for 100% coverage is the wrong metric. It's a nice idea, but you hit diminishing returns eventually. So don't bother going all the way. So now that builds, let's run the tests again. Cool, and everything still works. Let's do this, let's check what we've modified. We've added some tests, we've modified how that works, and we have done something wrong, which is in our ToggleView, the state should be in a separate file. One type per file. That's another advantage of .NET Core actually, is the project file format. No more each file explicitly included. Good, happy with that. CM all toggles view. Oh, it's not technically the all toggles view. Oh, okay, the all toggles view. Update to handle new multi-user activity state. Right. Well, I meant to write a bunch of API stuff this evening, but this sums up development. You go to do one thing and then there's actually something else you need to fix first. Now that we have a working view and working activity state, we can now actually implement API stuff. And they should all be actual API work that works. Yeah, there's 2 API endpoints already, one of which has just been updated by us, changing this ToggleView class. Yeah, and hopefully tomorrow, at least I think tomorrow. What day is it today? Is it Wednesday today? No, it's Tuesday. I might not stream tomorrow actually. I have fairly late gym class, so we'll see. So anyway, next time I stream, so it'll either be tomorrow or Thursday, I'll cover the actual API implementation, and hopefully, given this little to-do list here, we should be able to bash through at least all of the, I would imagine all the gets should be fairly quick to do. Because most of them are just sub-parts of the ToggleView. So like getting the /state endpoint will just return the state property. So these should all be fairly quick to do the gets, and then we'll move on to the interesting ones, which are the posts, deletes, and possibly put endpoint. Not sure if this should be post or put yet. Yeah, so that's it for this evening. Thank you all for watching. As usual, if you've got any questions, feel free to send me messages on Twitch or GitHub or Twitter or Reddit, I suppose. There's links in my channel profile to everything, and the repository is called Crispin on GitHub if you're looking for it, and the latest code I should have just pushed. I did. So yeah, thanks for watching, and thanks for the chat interaction. It was great.